Welcome to the portion of the trolling lesson that involves required equipment that's needed in your boat, both for the Coast Guard and just recommendations. So the Coast Guard has safety regulations for outboards that are 16 to 26 feet. You have to have this by law. And the Coast Guard will be checking out there, so you have to make sure everything's together. You need the numbers properly, your registration numbers properly displayed on your boat. And you need personal flotation devices for every person on your boat. So when we talk about life jackets, these do not, if you're not wearing this, it does not count as a life jacket in your boat. The only way this counts is if you're wearing it. Now, when you go to the store and buy one of these, it's not ready to go. There is a cartridge in here that, right there, that you have to put in the device. And you just kind of open up this little chamber, and then you have access to that. Right in there. And some of them have a clear window here so you can see if it's armed or not. Right here. So this is green. If that is ever red, you got a problem. That's a warning. It says service if red. So when you buy it at the store, these little, it's red, and these little cartridges need to be screwed in. Now, each of these cartridges has a model number on it, and they have an expiration date. Let's see what mine is. That can't be right. That's a serial number. It's not an I don't think they have an expiration date. Well, let me see. Maybe they do. No, I don't see an expiration date. But this was filled on 1/17. So it's 7 years old. So when you buy that, always have spares on hand. Because if they fail or something, if you don't have a spare, it's useless. Now, these, when you buy these, there's either manual or automatic or both. And they just Velcro together like this. In the brand new ones, the Velcro might be a little stiff. So just kind of open them and shut them, get familiar with how they're laid out and stuff. And when you have them on, when you put these on, make sure that they fit you right. Now this is mine. No one else gets to wear this. This one's mine. I always put this, Ricky has hers, and then we have spares for other people in the boat. So you want this tight. Sometimes you have to adjust it if you're wearing glass jackets. You have to make it a little bigger, but you want it on the outside. And get yourself familiar with where this is. This is an automatic inflate, but a little chamber here has to fill up with moisture before it inflates. This instantly inflates it. So just kind of touch this a few times. Go over in your mind where that's at and how to do it. You know, if you decide at some point to replace your cartridge because it is older, practice. You know, like jump in the water on a summer day and let it go off. So this is really important. And if you take it off, it doesn't even count as a life jacket. You have to be wearing it. So when you, as a boat captain, if you go in the morning and one of your inflatables was left in a compartment and moisture got in there and it exploded, it doesn't count as a life jacket. So make sure that you have other backup life jackets in your boat. You know, these ones are kayak ones because they're comfortable to wear. I added a whistle and a light to each one. And I always have more than enough life jackets. So, what else? So you need a visual distress signal. And these are required because it's part of the Great Lakes. This is kind of a special regulation. And flares are a visual distress signal, but they also have an expiration date on them. So when you're buying these in the store, be mindful and actually look at these expired September of 2023. Now, I knew they were expired, but I keep them in the boat anyway. They're still going to go off, but they're not going to meet the Coast Guard requirements for what I need to have in my boat. I got one of these that doesn't expire. This is a visual distress signal. The light turns on, you just have to twist it. Visual distress signal. It floats, it's waterproof. I can attach it to my wrist, and it's good to go. This meets the requirements and it never expires. And flares aren't cheap. You know, this is a little bit more expensive on the get-go, but the shelf life on flares isn't very long. So you also, you know, one of the other things is you can get in these kits is literally a visual. This is a daytime visual distress signal for boats, and this complies for the Coast Guard. So if you're in trouble, you can just hold this up. This counts as a visual distress signal, but only during the day. So what else do we need here? What do I do with the paper? A fire extinguisher. Everyone should have a fire extinguisher in their boat. No matter where you are, you need one. Check it to make sure the little needle is still in the green. And get familiar where it is. Have it handy. Fires on a boat are no joke. You also need a sound producing device. So here I have a couple air horns. I'm not going to blow it off. But there's also whistles. Just have some whistles in your glove box. Now, this is important, and hardly anybody knows this. Boating in restricted visibility. So if you're out in your boat and it's foggy, you go out in the morning, the water's warm, the air's cool, and there's a fog. A vessel that's making way, that means that you're operating the boat, you have to produce one prolonged blast every 2 minutes. That's required.
Not that.
Well, something. Every 2 minutes, you have to make a loud noise so other boats around you hear you. So it can be the boat horn. That's a prolonged blast. That is a requirement. Most people do not know that, especially these guys that are out on Lake Michigan salmon fishing, and all of a sudden there's a boat right on you, and they never said a word. You know, you got to be blowing that. And then you want to get kind of scary is you're out there, you can't see anything, and then all of a sudden you hear a freighter do that. You know, so here you got this big ship coming at you, and you hear the horn, and it's like, oh shit, where the hell's that? That's a lot bigger than we are. So it's required. So a prolonged blast every 2 minutes. So the captain has to be on there. I am not going to be leading a group in the fog. I'm not. But what if we're out there and all of a sudden it gets foggy? You know, and we're going to make our way back in slowly. But you have to do this one prolonged blast every 2 minutes. Now, if you're stopped and it's foggy or restricted visibility, you do 2 prolonged blasts every 2 minutes. That way, the other boats around you that know that you're there, they know if you're moving or stopped. That's the reason for that rule. So if you're anchored, then it's 2 short every 2 minutes. You need your lights on, your life jackets on, and you have to assign lookouts to be looking around. You know, that's the thing about the co-anglers in your boat. You are you can't get so tunnel visioned on the lines all the time. You're constantly looking around. And don't assume the captain sees something. You know, hey, did you see, notice there's a log. Hey, there's a guy coming at us trolling and his lines are out kind of far. So you're going to be reeling up these outside lines to give a wider path to be able to pass each other. That is it for that. You know, there's weather and current and surface temp apps. I'm not going to get into that, but there's some other things that are good to know. Have a small bucket in here for bailing in case you start taking on water. Now, this one is very, very important. If you are in your boat and all of a sudden you hear your live well or some type of water coming out of the side of your boat, like your bilge pump turned on. If you're filling your live well and you just keep it on manual fill all the time, when that gets full, that water has to go somewhere and it's going to come out that chute. So you're going to hear it come out. When that goes on, make a mental note. Oh, that's my live well is full and it's overflowing and it's coming out that side hole. That's what it's supposed to do. Well, if your live well is empty and you don't have your live well pump on, and all of a sudden you hear that water coming out of the side, your boat is taking on water underneath the floor and it's pumping it out with the bilge pump. You should be aware of that as soon as it happens. If you wait until water is up on the floor and starts coming up to your ankles, you miss this cue unless there was a bilge pump failure. So, most boats have a hatch. We'll look at this hatch back here. So this black thing back here is just a hatch. And this is you can see what's going on in there. I should have prepped this, but I didn't. So right now, I can see the bottom of my boat. I can see the bilge pump. And if the plug was not in the boat, when I open this, if I was in the water, I would see water pouring in there. Well, if you see water pouring in there, like one time I was out and I put the plug in. Well, the plug fell out somehow. Well, and then I hear this pump going on, and I think to myself, dang, that pump should not be going on. As the only sign I had, I just got set up. That pump should not be going on. I am hearing something I am not supposed to hear. And I looked in there, and water was pouring in where the plug was. Well, I'm like, oh, shit. So when that happens, obviously, you get everything in as fast as you can, and you accelerate at a high rate of speed, get the front end up, and once you start going, that water's going to drain out. So then what you're going to have to do is go back to the dock and get the boat on the trailer to get the plug in. So how you do that is, you have someone, that's it, one of your first mates in the boat, you pull up the dock, they jump out, you pull away and you ride around fast, keeping that water in or out of the boat, and then they back the thing down, and then you drive it up on the trailer, hook it up, and they pull it out, and the rest of the water drains out. Put the plug in, relaunch, and go about your day. That's how that works. Any questions about that? Okay, so other things to have in your boat. An oar is never a bad idea, or some kind of poker. You're coming into the, you need to reach something out to grab it at the pier or push away or grab something in the water. A first aid kit, it's always a good idea. An extra drain plug and an anchor with 200 feet of line. So why would you need an anchor? Well, what if it's really windy, your motor breaks down, and the wind is blowing you to a big rocky jetty? Well, if you don't have an anchor, you're going to crash into the jetty. You're going to wreck your boat. Just throw the anchor out and get on the phone or the radio or whatever and try to get some help there. At least you're not going to crash in anywhere, and you're going to be in one relatively the same place until they get there to help you. Towels and sponges to clean up. Once you got fish flopping around on the floor, it gets really slippery. Flashlight, rain gear, a basic little toolkit. You always can use that. Your mooring lines, binoculars, and I always recommend wearing sunglasses. New anglers that have big fish on in your netting, there's tension on the line, all of a sudden the crankbait comes out and comes flying back. You do not want a hook in the eye. Wear some type of protective eyewear or sunglasses. And that's it. This is pretty much covers the safety gear. Have more than one cushion. Doesn't hurt. And we'll, one more thing here is a marine radio. This is optional. I always have one. If you have a marine radio and we're out there, do not think we're going to be communicating via this radio. It's for emergencies only. And if you look over here, here is the emergency radio call procedures. We'll try to get a screenshot of that so you can save that on your phone so you know what to do in case you have to use a radio, marine radio, for an emergency procedure. But just follow that situation, and if you have an emergency, if it's truly an emergency, let's just cover emergencies here. What would be an emergency? Maybe you collided with another boat and the boat is seriously taking on water. Maybe you hit a big rock and it's not the plug and you can't operate and the boat is taking on water. You have a fire. Somebody fell out and you can't get to them. These are true emergency situations. Call 911 immediately. Look on your graph and get your GPS coordinates and get ready to give them to them. Do not call me. I can't help you as fast as they can. If the connection gets lost and I don't know where you are, I'm not the person to call in a true emergency. Somebody has a heart attack. Somebody's seriously injured. All these things, call 911. Tell them where you are. Don't say, "Oh, I see a pole, and I think I'm by over here." Give them the GPS coordinates off your graph. And if you don't know how to do that, you better figure it out before you go on the water next. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I can't tell you everything. Some stuff you have to know how to do on your own. So that's going to conclude the needed gear and safety equipment on the boat. We're going to shut this one off and then start the next one.